Hey everybody, it's late, so I'm going to try to keep it down. So recently, I made a video about a tweet that I'm going to put on the screen right now. I disagreed with the tweet for a few reasons. I won't summarize them all here in depth. You can watch that video if you want to. But then, I think that day, vaush made a response stream basically about my video called The Delightful How the Left Helped Make Andrew Tate Popular. So I'm not going to be doing a full response to this video. I think it would take far too much time and not be all that helpful. But there are a few points that I wanted to talk about, so let's get into it. So let me just play you a bit of this stream that I thought was interesting. People do believe in an ideology that calls for suppressing others, suppressing women in particular. And so that's something we should think about here.
I don't believe that. I don't I don't I don't really think people gravitate towards reactionary ideologies because they like suppressing others. I think that's kind of reductive. I think that people have very strong fear and anxiety responses that get preyed upon by reactionary movements. The person is manipulated into it. They have to feel like the sexism they're engaging in, it's not an active determinative thing on their part. It's a reflexive a natural and unavoidable response to the external threats that they're convinced exist, you know?
So I'm saying there that men are attracted to Andrew Tate because they're attracted to the patriarchy. They have a belief in and an enjoyment of the suppression of women. And vaush is saying, no, it's not really about that. These men or these teenage boys don't like suppressing people. That's not what they're in it for. This is mostly about their insecurity. And people like Andrew Tate are manipulating them, using their insecurity to get them to believe in these reactionary beliefs. And then he goes on here to talk about how, teenage boys are not cognizant of their desire to suppress women. They're not going around talking about how into suppressing women they are. That's not their major mental motivation.
Especially if we're talking about Andrew Tate fans. We really think like 12-year-old boys on Twitch are waking up like, yeah, dude, I love to suppress others. My male privilege in this patriarchy is good and I want more. I just don't think that's how that happens.
So I think this is actually like the fundamental disagreement between vaush and I. It's the real reason why this disagreement is happening in the first place. So, let me respond. What I believe is not that teenage boys are walking around thinking to themselves, oh, how I love to be a sexist today. That's not what I mean at all. What I am saying is that misogyny within our current social, historical, and material context does confer benefits to boys, that it helps them in certain ways. For one thing, it tells boys that they're better than women, that they are the better of the two sexes. Which is, of course, a psychologically gratifying thing to believe. It tells boys that women, as a political bloc, need to be sexually available to men, that men deserve women and should be getting them. It tells men that women should be subservient to their needs. That is to say, they are not the protagonists of society. Men are the main characters of the world, and women exist to play a supporting role in that. These are all tangible, material benefits to people's lives. And while I don't think that 13-year-old boys watching Andrew Tate are thinking to themselves, oh, isn't it great that I'm going to be suppressing some women soon, I do think they see Andrew Tate and think, well, he's kind of got a lot to offer. That is an interesting proposition to me. It would be cool if women were how I wanted them to be. To make my point more clear here, let me talk for a minute about racism, another example of social prejudice. Racism is an irrational belief, and of course it comes from irrational places. Of course people are manipulated into it. But let's not get it twisted. A white supremacist society certainly does give white people certain benefits at the cost of black liberation. White people can be assured in such a society that the best jobs are for them, that the best houses are for them, that they will have more wealth than black people do, that they will have more political power than black people do. Sure, there's an element of irrationality there. The world would be better for everyone if racism was gone, but that doesn't mean that racism isn't compelling, that it doesn't have anything to offer people, that there's no reason why a white person would be invested in white power or that a man would be invested in male power. So, no, I don't believe that men and boys are merely manipulated through their insecurity into believing this arbitrary and horrible thing about women. Rather, I think that the appeal of Andrew Tate has been the appeal that patriarchy has had for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That the reason why people are attracted to figures like him is that social misogyny is a fairly popular political project, and that's for real reasons. This is important to understanding the topic at hand, because if insecurity was all that was there, if it truly was the animating force of misogyny in our society, then maybe Vaush would be right. We just have to try to make men feel good about themselves on the left, and it'll all sort of work itself out. But I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a correct assertion to make. There's a few points in his stream where Vaush seems to treat me as some kind of fatalist. Like I believe that men and boys are just going to be a certain way and that there's no way to change that.
It's like, well, we couldn't have done anything. Yes, you could have. We always can. We always can. Never tell yourself like, oh, this was predetermined. No, we can always try harder.
No, I don't believe that at all. I have hope for everybody in this, fucked up world of ours. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of material reality, of the things that are actually bearing on people's lives. The tweet in question, the one I responded to, made it seem like some bad leftist advice was a primary animating feature of men being misogynistic, of liking people like Andrew Tate. And I'm just saying, no, material reality is much, much more important here. Some advice that lefty Twitter people give is a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. Okay, a little change of location here. The next thing I wanted to talk about is Vaush's section on advice. In my video, I say very brazenly that almost all advice on the internet from people who don't know you is completely useless. And Vaush, of course, disagrees with that and thinks online advice is very helpful. So I'm actually a little bit more conciliatory about this point. I'll admit something to you here. I have a bug up my ass about self-help. As an industry, as a concept. I think the entire ecosystem of self-help people is overrun with charlatans who have convinced themselves with literally no expertise that they're some kind of an expert and can tell you what to do. I don't think it really helps people. I don't think there's evidence that it does any good. And I just don't like it. It pisses me off. It's my personal, bugaboo. That said, I was too brazen in my video. It's not my place to tell you what content is helpful to you, what might help you as a man in this world. I don't know that. But nevertheless, there were a few points I wanted to make about Vaush's section here. So first of all, when I was talking about self-help advice in my video, I was speaking about pretty broad advice on how to get motivated, on how to be a successful person, stuff that I generally think is absolute nonsense. However, it seems like what Vaush is talking about is more specific. His major example of the usefulness of advice is giving people words on how to hold a conversation with a girl at a party, where to take girls for dates, etc.
Give an example of good advice right now. Well, I did earlier with the guys trying to find cheap local things to go to. The stuff that I've said about when you're having a conversation with somebody, at a party, in any kind of social situation, make sure to occasionally ask questions of them or to prompt responses so they can tell you implicitly how they feel about the convo you're having. Oh, and by the way, if you're talking to new people, feel free to talk about your interests. Be interesting. Talk about what you care about.
I think this advice is totally helpful and fine. The more specific, the better. All that said, when I watched this section, I couldn't help but think, will this kind of really specific advice on how to dress well or how to hold up a conversation with a girl at a party, are these really things that we think are going to fundamentally change our political landscape? I just find myself so deeply skeptical of it. Vaush is giving WikiHow advice in this section of video. Stuff like ask people questions take interest in their interests, talk about yourself, things like that. Stuff that you'd find on the frankly incredible website WikiHow. And it's just like, how much of an audience are we really hoping to even help or access with this kind of work? Like, I believe there's a reason why Vaush names his video this really incendiary line about how the left helps Andrew Tate and not something about, like, how to talk to a girl at a party, because the latter video just wouldn't do very well and probably wouldn't hold people's interest nearly as much. I think that Andrew Tate actually has a real advantage in this arena over someone like Vaush. Specifically, that Andrew Tate is fucking crazy. Andrew Tate gets to say ridiculous things about women all day, every day. It's incendiary, it's huge, it's controversial. That drives audiences. It makes people interested. I don't necessarily think the same applies to a video about how to ask people questions. Now, 100%, I could be wrong here. I could be dead wrong, and I'm interested to be proven wrong. I think that if this kind of content took off, it might be helpful to people. I mean, people might benefit from it. I don't know. But at the end of the day, my position is honestly just, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think men wanting for little tips on how to have conversations at parties is really what's influencing them to flock to misogynists. That's just what I believe. It's an untested claim you guys are making, and while I can't prove the negative there, that just means we don't know. I don't believe it really has that much of an impact. I don't think it's the major player here in people's beliefs, but I guess we'll see. Finally, I just wanted to talk about something that I thought was a bit funny. So in my video, I give self-help advice. The advice was basically, do good things and don't do bad things, and you personally know which things are good and bad. The struggle is doing that thing, and it's really hard for me to help you with that. Vaush laughed at this incredible advice and said it was dumb.
If that's Big Joel's image of advice, maybe I understand where he's coming from. Big Joel, in my personal opinion, I think the advice you're giving is kind of awful, because it's not a wonder that you think all the good advice has already been given if that's what you're framing.
But the thing is, I was doing just a bit of a troll there. I was playing a bit of 4D chess. What I mean is, what I said in that video, the advice I gave, is essentially a verbatim quote of Jordan Peterson.
Stop doing what you know to be wrong. Stop today. Don't waste time asking how you know that what you're doing is wrong. There is no more effective way of operating in the world than to conceptualize the highest good that you can and then strive to attain it.
You know what's good. You know what you have to do, so do it. And I know it's hard, but that's life, Buster. You know, he does this shit all the time. The book 12 Rules for Life just spends the entire time restating the claim that you should do good stuff. There's almost no useful specific advice there. It's just like, be cool. But that's kind of my point, right? Self-help advice is generally very unhelpful. So, you know, if you want to think my advice is so bad, so worthy of mockery, it's worthwhile to consider that oftentimes conservatives aren't doing much better. They're not really giving people more depth than that. There's not really more compassion to Jordan Peterson than there was to me. Perhaps then I might suggest that the reason why men are going to Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate is not because of some deep, important advice as compared to the left's brain-dead advice. It's because they're attracted to other things about them. Their political project, their attitudes, their reactionary personas. Anyway, this is a very minor point, all things considered, but I just thought it was a kind of a funny thing to put in my video. Anyway, that's all I had to say about this video. Probably this is going to be my last word on the subject. So I hope that you agree with me and never challenge me again. Bye.